Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On. I'm Aki Obake. On this episode, we'll bring you key discussions, resolutions, and agendas from the second edition of the Africa Social Impact Summit. Here gathered for the second edition of the Africa Social Impact Summit is an ensemble of private and public sector players championing the sustainable development agenda and finding lasting solutions to Africa's social, environmental, and economic challenges. Co-convened by the Sterling-Born Foundation and United Nations Nigeria and their partners, the summit, according to organizers, addresses the gaps in achieving sustainability on the continent.
We have the public sector fully represented, even from the federal ministries and even the state ministries here in the room. We have the private sector, from listed companies to non-listed companies in the room. I think it is time for that renaissance, and this summit definitely blocks the gap. We also have investors in the room that have the checks to sign for innovative solutions. So yes, this summit is definitely a beehive of activities when it comes to achieving the sustainable development goals and scaling existing impact innovations. We have an excellent pool of investors in the deal room. Our deal room partner is the African Venture Philanthropy Alliance, and they have pulled in investors from across the globe into this deal room. Of course, pairing them with excellent deals that match the interests of these investors with reference to ticket sizes and also sectors of interest.
Our observation is that there are a lot of people that are trying to solve the same problem and they're not talking to each other. The objective of the summit is to bring everyone who is trying to tackle the same problem to the table, have them talk to each other, have them create a single point of focus where everyone can bring in resources. Because the fear is that you may have enough resources, but if it is dissipated across so many fronts, your impact will be limited. At the end of the day, when you co-convene a summit like this with the United Nations, what you do is you bring a lot of people under the same umbrella. There are a lot of side conversations, and the outcome we seek is collaboration so that we can get more impact for the same dollar amount.
We have realized over time as United Nations that no one can do development alone. It needs multi-stakeholder partnerships, as we call it in our jargon. And the private sector is a key engine of development. Let me not call it growth. Why is that? Because I think governments need to set the regulatory framework, need to create an environment where people are safe and where they feel their money counts for something if they invest it. So if government creates a conducive environment, the private sector can invest. So I see the role of the United Nations as working with all these stakeholders, working with government to support them in creating a conducive environment, and working with private sector to encourage them to not just run after profit, but to make impact a priority.
Already, some organizations at the summit attest to the need to make impacts by highlighting the roles they are playing in nurturing fresh and young innovative ideas.
We know that climate change is a very big issue, and there's so many factors around climate change. Beyond just the effect on the environment. There is the people, there is the planet, and also the profitable side for companies. So for us, we keep looking at those innovative methods to sort of scale the different challenges that we're facing from the climate change perspective, either by creating an adaptive model or mitigating model to create functional businesses that can solve climate change problems, right? So we jokingly say that we love to solve climate change issues with a business model.
We recently released just insights into how well or not so well we're doing with regard to carbon neutrality and zero carbon emissions by the year 2030, for example. But beyond this, even with regard to sub-Saharan Africa, we recently announced and launched Book for Startups Climate Change Accelerator, targeting the Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa specifically. And we closed applications with about 90 startups in our pipeline from Africa, which made up 70% of the pool of those that apply for our program. I imagine we'll select more of them from Africa than other parts. And these different startups are working to do different things. They do things such as show renewable energy, like this, not renewable, I'll say alternative energy and renewable energy. For example, things like carbon credits rewards, for example, things like reducing emissions, for example, things like, or even sustainable agri-tech as well, or agricultural solutions as well.
Over the past 13 years, AfriLabs has worked to build a community around innovation and technology hubs who provide an environment for young innovators to come in with interesting ideas across various sectors, right? So whether it's education, climate, agriculture, fintech, financial services or the likes. And then what we do working with these hubs is that we help them go through the different stages of turning their innovative ideas into a successful business, right? So from the idea validation to building their minimal viable product to access to markets and the likes. But then a very important component is the investment part, right? Because, one can say that investment is the lifeblood of a startup, right? And how we do this in terms of driving investment into African startups is that we work with a range of stakeholders. So we work with angel investors, for example, through our partnership with Africa Business Angel Network, which is a network of angel investors across Africa. And we connect the entrepreneurs within our network to the angel investors. Now, once investments have been made, right, we match it with a matching fund, right, which is granted by development organizations, governments, corporate foundations, and the likes, right? And then this fund basically helps to also de-risk the startup, increase the amount of capital and funding that goes into African startups, while still leveraging on the innovation hubs to provide follow-on support to the startups.
Taking strategic positions in promoting sustainability remains pivotal. Hence, these entrepreneurs give insights into the efforts they are taking so far.
So the summit is really an important avenue for organizations who are focused on sustainability, organizations who want to make profit and then make impact as well. So at Alana Grain, what we do is to make sure that our farmers grow sustainably. Now, how we do that is, as we provide this quality inputs, we also do capacity building training. So this summit has been able to empower us, to better understand that the farmers that we're attending to, the smallholder farmers, they need better care in the sense of people-tailored financing. So we need more innovative finance. We need an approach that, is focused on area-specific or, region-specific development.
Yeah, so the Africa Social Impact Summit has been a very great melting point of ideas and people who are behind the ideas changing the world. So for us at Trace and Trace Academia, being part of this summit helped us to interact with different ecosystem players, help us to learn best practices, share some of our own best practices, and more importantly, find people that we can collaborate with to achieve our impact on the ground.
Another interesting attraction to the summit is the activities in the deal room.
We took applications from over 400 people or 400 businesses, and we shortlisted them to a list of not more than 15 people who are going to make it into the room. And we have a collection. We brought together close to 20 different type of investors across the continuum of capital, which is equity, debt, all sort of mixes. And the goal of the deal room really is to see that, take poverty for instance, there's a gap between dreams and accomplishments in Africa, and sometimes it's just knowledge that is missing, sometimes it's intellect that is missing, sometimes it's a connection that is missing, sometimes it's markets that is missing, but sometimes it's finance that is missing. What we're trying to do is to move the needle in trying to make a dent in that poverty reduction by a little bit, just by making sure we fund businesses, or we move that needle one funded business at a time, or one well-funded business at a time.
We are a wealth creation company, and access to credit is one of the tools to build wealth. So we're trying to bring that HNI vibe to the middle class. And so lowering the cost of credit was the biggest tool that we could bring to the middle class, and that's what everybody needed. And we've been able to lower it cheaper than what you get traditional banks. I think the only people that beat us is if you go to the government or you go to cooperatives directly. Those are the only rates that beat us. In terms of interest, I think I've been very happy with the way the investors have conducted, the questions they've asked, and the time they've given us to actually express ourselves and talk about our idea. I don't want to blow my own horn. I would hope that they enjoyed. The questions were very insightful, and it seemed that they understood what we were trying to do as Stacks.
We were able to communicate to them how we are changing the lives of end users, right? So 90% of energy consumption in Africa is on cooking. So if you can solve the cooking issue, the cooking fuel issue, most people use dirty fuels, charcoal and firewood. If you solve that issue, you have solved a chunk of Africa's carbon emission issue. So we were able to communicate that to them, and we were able to get their interest. And we look forward to hearing from more investors for one-on-one sessions as we follow up to close our deals with them.
What we're basically doing is to try to get enough people on the platform to be able to call post-harvest waste. And in that, we're going to be doing a lot of aggregation and sourcing out for these farmers in rural communities. Now, we're giving them links and access to warehousing and transportation to make sure that this products actually leave the rural community and actually get to the people who actually need them. So basically, that's just what we do.
How would you say the investors here at the deal room took or bought the idea or bought the business model?
Okay, I got very, very good feedback. Most of them were impressed about it. If a few iterations here and there, but I don't think it has any dent on how they feel about the business model.
It's amazing the number of things that Nigerians are doing, how impactful these things are coming up in Africa. I mean, I remember the guy that is into waste to wealth concept, the lady that is into production of paper bags, brown paper bags that you can use for load. And all of these things are scalable businesses. It's quite amazing how they have been able to put the thought through to it, the business concept, the business, the background of the business, and they are able to look forward to the future to actually know how they can scale and how much they require. It's quite amazing and inspiring for me.
We saw people who they're actually have compelling stories, and they're great with how they present their stories. Essentially, we also saw how that they're able to take feedbacks from investors, and how they are able to articulate their answers in line with exposing the best part of their business is their business model and how they're able to return, this money.
Some have already, hit significant milestone in terms of, how much they've been able to generate on their own. You could see the one that speaks to processing, agro-processing, and creating generating power from biomass. I think he got a standing ovation, and it's something that it's even been led by a very an elderly gentleman, and is very forward looking in terms of what areas the kind of partnership he's looking for. Is encouraging new ideas, is willing to open to equity, and that exactly are the kind of it's one of the beauties of a session like the entire program that attracts people like him.
No doubt, the race to 2030 is getting interesting as more ideas and innovations are born to position Africa as a sustainable continent. But that's all on this episode of Focus On. I'm Aki Obakeye. Thank you for watching.